Well, hello. We thought that we would do a whole new type of video because I was talking to my friend and colleague, Dr. Anah-Jayne Markland, who will introduce herself in just a second. But Anna and I were having a discussion about critical thought. And we thought that, especially maybe in this day and age, it would be very interesting to have some discussions about critical thought. It's important in our teaching. And we think that it can be very beneficial to everyone to just once in a while think about these kinds of topics. So we just start a new series of videos, and there will be a number of installments. We don't know how many installments yet, so we need your input to hear if you think this is interesting. That's pretty much it. So maybe, Anna, first you could just introduce yourself.
Well, I am Anna. I am a colleague of Dr. Brown's. We work together. He got me hooked on pens. I wanted to put a pen in the video, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's obligatory.
But we were talking about critical thought. And I hope he invited me here because we are work colleagues and friends. But also I teach a whole class on critical thought and critical reading. So I have a lot of this information just on the tip of my tongue already. So I'd like to ramble on with students already about how to be critical thinkers, how to be critical readers specifically, because we are digesting information constantly. So how do we wade through all of the information that is coming at us to figure out what information is worthy of our attention, worthy of us acting on that information, and which information we should just let go. So that's right. Hopefully what we'll be talking about.
I think so. And at this point, we also gladly point out that these, of course, are our views, not the college's views, just to be sure. But we just thought it would be interesting. And again, we both teach this kind of stuff. I don't teach an explicit course on critical thought, but Anna does. So we thought it would be interesting. So hence, we start.
So we're going to start today with something this is going to be very basic. And I don't know if I want to say I apologize, but I just want to say, to anyone that's watching, this is very basic and you probably have an idea of this already. But because this is what I start with my students before we go into argumentation, is to break down our terms, right? So let's understand our terms, break this all down. So that's the difference between an opinion, a fact, and an educated opinion. And really, this is what I hope we will be focusing on throughout this series, is educated opinions and measuring those educated opinions. But to first understand what we even mean by an educated opinion, let's look at what an opinion is and what a fact is. So, Stephen, you're going to be my student.
Yes.
You were my 35 students that I usually have.
Nice.
In one brain. You do have multiple personalities, so I think this is the same, right? So it is the same.
Yeah. It'll work out.
So what I usually start with, what I ask students, I was going to say Baby Yoda, but let's just say an alien, an unnamed alien, but it would be great if it was Baby Yoda, but maybe an unnamed alien comes to Earth, asks you to explain what is an opinion. How would you break down an opinion? For you, what is part of an opinion?
That's a good question. I think that an opinion is an expression of someone's beliefs or thoughts or feelings, which may or may not be substantiated by facts. But that would, I think, to me, would be often somewhat personal.
Yeah, awesome. Good job. A+. Usually too, but I like to draw it.
God, because if I would have failed already, I would never recover.
Well, there's going to be other questions, right? So there's time for failure, but let's hope not. But usually what students will say, or what I'll point out, is usually with opinions, we think of them being more subjective. They're perhaps more biased because of what you said. They're based on more personal feelings, experiences. So also opinions are perhaps something that change a little bit more easily than facts. That our opinions on things will change as we come across new information, new experiences, new feelings. A little bit more fluid, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Think so? So then a fact, how would you define a fact to Baby Yoda?
Yeah, that's one that I found a lot harder because I was already thinking a bit about that earlier today. And I find that much harder. When I think of facts, I think of something that is a lot less subjective than an opinion, maybe entirely objective, if such a thing is possible. But so for sure I would say less subjective. I would also say more objectively verifiable, something that you can, like water could boil at 100 degrees Celsius, and you can easily verify that. You can do that in different places on Earth, etc.
Yeah.
So I think that's an important aspect of it. And I think also that for me, a fact would be a lot more stable over time, I would say, than an opinion would be.
Mm-hmm. Which is why we love facts, right?
Yes.
We love those universal truths that remain the same, of, like you said, with boiling water, that it remains the same as we do the experiments, as we test something out, we get the same results. So this is the kind of fact that we like, right?
Yes.
Universal, sustained truth that can be tested, and the tests will become the same. Hopefully they're more objective, but again, you've already touched on that, of can you ever be completely objective? We're not just critical thinkers, we're overthinkers. So I don't know if either of us would think there's anything as objective truth, but a little bit more objective. So usually to my students, the first word that will come up is evidence. So there will be evidence behind facts. Usually there's a certain type of evidence that people like more than others. What kind of evidence would you like for facts, Stephen?
Well, given my academic background, I would often think more in terms of quantitative evidence than very qualitative, even though within psychology there's of course also a lot of qualitative stuff. So for me, I would almost be inclined to say more numerical evidence than just more subjective evidence, I suppose. More qualitative.
Yes. This is why in the science world people like those kind of facts better. Yes. I'm all about, books and reading, so I don't have the same kind of universal truth behind it. But what I'd like to also point out is that facts, even though they are more stable, they're more objective, facts also do change as we are presented with new information, new evidence, as we learn more, our facts of what we were presented with change. So we can't be so wrapped up within the comfort of having a certain fact to not be able to then change our thinking and our knowledge to accept new information, right? So the example I always use is Pluto, because I was taught when I learned about the solar system that Pluto was a planet. This was a fact. This is no longer. Actually, I think it's debatable now. Now it's into the opinion category. I don't even know where it falls now. But there's facts that change, right?
Yeah, and maybe also, sorry to interrupt you, but I mean also the even with a fact, I think that there may also be qualifying factors, like when we talked about water, and water does boil at 100 degrees Celsius, but not at every altitude. Some altitudes boils at the low temperatures. So even that, not only can it change, I suppose, but sometimes it may still, observations may still bear out a fact, but only under certain circumstances. So that's complicated.
It's also where our attention lies, right? Of what we value at a certain historical point in a certain location. We will put then time and energy into investigating certain things, and those become the universal truths. Right? Then there's things that it's been the history of medicine with women, right? That it these universal truths then change. So facts as well need to be interrogated. They need to be investigated. We can't just decide that something is one way and then ignore any other kind of investigation, right? Interrogate that. So facts and opinions, but we all have our opinions. This is something that not a whole lot of people like to hear. But yes, everyone has a right to an opinion, but not all opinions have equal merit.
What?
I know. I'm sorry. Some opinions can be harmful. Some opinions can be purely incorrect. It doesn't mean you don't have the right to have that opinion, but there's different levels of merit with opinion. And we need to be able to recognize and even measure opinions, because really on a daily basis, we are not dealing with facts. We are dealing with what is more called an educated opinion. So evidence that is married with opinions. But how do we then measure, or how do we interrogate the quality of opinions that are coming at us? And which ones are we listening to? Which ones are we going to act on? And which ones do we need to then ignore because they may be harmful and they may be just simply incorrect? So one thing that even with them that I have to work on constantly is to interrogate which types of opinions you are drawn to when you are listening to the news, when you are reading, I don't know, whatever, to think about which type of information am I drawn to? Am I drawn to it because it's my choir preaching to me? Because I love it when things I agree with are being validated by what I'm reading or listening to. It's great. It's just great. So am I taking that information simply because I like it? Because it already aligns with what I believe? Or am I looking at it closely enough and am I interrogating it closely enough that the conclusions that it's drawing are rational, are following the premise that it starts from, that the evidence that is given is following that premise? And because a lot of what we're dealing with on a daily basis is news, is it ethical? Is it being done with the public good in mind? So this is, if I was in the formal classroom, this is what the rest of the semester would be spent on, is how do we then unpack an educated opinion? And really that's argumentation, right? How does someone make an argument? What are valid ways to make an argument, to support an argument? And then for us as readers, as us as thinkers, us as consumers, how do we determine what types of arguments we should then be paying attention to? Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Anything to add?
I think it does, because I find it incredibly easy, not just what you say. If someone writes something, let's just stick just for a second to written texts.
Yeah.
I guess every text is written, but like to written arguments.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, very easy to agree with someone who pretty much vents your opinion on something because it's your opinion. So why would you be naturally critical about that? But I do find it is very easy to be drawn into certain arguments or drawn into certain texts simply because they are written in a convincing manner, even if you know that it's probably, I'm just going to put this very bluntly, but it's probably crockpot and it doesn't make any sense what was being written, but it's still sometimes easy to be drawn into that and to believe that and think, oh, oh my goodness, this is terrifying, what, etc. But actually suspend your critical thoughts simply because something is written in a convincing manner. And I think it would be very interesting.
Well, and how to then
yeah, exactly, to separate it, right? How do you know?
Separate it, and then even being able, because this is something else we can talk about, being able to then recognize because usually when that's happening, it's because they're using a really, I don't know, a good way of persuading you, right? That they are drawing on your heartstrings in some way. They're presenting an argument in a way that makes sense. That a lot of poor argumentation or irrational thought can be covered with persuasion, with a certain type of persuasion. So even that, right? Being able to look past ethos, logos, pathos and understand what is actually being said can be very, very difficult. Very difficult. Yes. The other, I guess, bit of bad news, other than not all opinions have equal merit, is it's a lot of work to be a critical thinker, because you are constantly having to, I keep saying interrogate, but interrogate what you were reading and why you're having a certain response to what you're reading, listening to, watching. It's a lot of work.
Yes, but on the other hand, it is a lot of work, but I don't know if it's a negative. I think it's also, I think in fact it's a great benefit, and that was one of the reasons I thought these types of videos would be a good idea. I think it can be very beneficial and very liberating to start doing that, and to realize that a lot of the things you did read throughout your life actually make no sense. And this is not the focus of this would not be to debunk specific myths, I think, or to really go against. That's not what the point of this is. But there is a lot of stuff, a lot of things that you read and see and hear all around you, and that you may think are very convincing, but once you start to develop the cognitive tools to analyze and criticize those types of input, you gain a lot of liberty by realizing that maybe you can look at something from a different perspective, even if you are not really aware of it.
Yeah, and I think you're right that it's like any other skill, that I think when you first start, it can be very difficult, and it can feel you can feel unmoored, because a question I'll then get from my students is, so then do I just not believe anything I read, or I just mistrust everything? And no, that's not, I'm not saying that you can then never trust anything. You can never believe anything you read, but you should always maintain some healthy skepticism. And I think it does become an easier skill, right? Once you practice and you know what to look for.
I think so. I absolutely think so. And it is a skill. And like with any skill, you can train it. And just by doing it over and over again, you will make progress, and it will become easier for you, and it will become a more natural thing. And yeah, it doesn't mean, it can also be a bit frightening sometimes, because I think there are moments where, especially when you start out doing these things, that you kind of hit an existential crisis and don't trust or believe anything anymore, and then turn into Descartes and be all strange and fevered and not understand anything about the universe anymore, because nothing is real.
Yeah.
Well, that can happen, but in a way that's also very educational, to actually maybe sometimes for the first time of your life actually really doubt something and then see what happens.
Well, because I think for most of our education, we are told to just believe what we are reading, or believe what we are being given to read by our teachers or the adults in our lives or other authority figures, that it can then be quite unnerving to have someone tell you, well, you should second guess this information that you're being given.
Yeah. And it's not always something I think personally, and that really is my personal opinion, but I don't think that type of skill is always taught enough in schools. And this is not, I'm not going to go off on some rant against education, because it won't make any difference. But I think that often it is a matter of, listen, here are the facts, study this, test in 2 weeks, you figure it out, and that's all. You reproduce what is required of you on the test, and then you pass, and then you continue. But a lot of education is like that, and I disagree with that, but that's why I think it's good to think about these sorts of things once in a while.
Exactly. And now we're adults, so now we can take responsibility for whatever, I don't know, lacking that we've had, and work on it ourselves.
And we shall gladly help you do it in these videos.
Hopefully.
I think so. Well, that sounds really good. I look forward to.
Creating
I think it's
existential crises, maybe.
well, yeah. I mean, I've been in that kind of stuff too, and I think it has helped me to really suddenly doubt everything, and then you sort of crawl out of that again. I think it's very helpful.
Yeah.
But I think especially now, I think this is a very good start to have an idea of opinion versus fact, and now we will slowly build up the kit, the tools you have at your disposal to test whether something is one or the other.
Yeah. And a good place to start, even before you have that kit, is to start interrogating yourself of what is it that I am drawn to, attracted to within this piece? Why am I convinced about this piece? And most of the times it'll be because I agree with this piece already, which is fine, but to be aware of it is a really big first step, I think.
Yep. So this is your homework then. You will read something and you will see why you do or do not agree with it.
Yes.
Pop quiz next week. All right.
I'll mail out the quiz.
Yeah.
Stephen has to mark them. I'm done marking for now.
I'll mark. Yeah. All right. Sounds good. That means we are set up for next time, I think, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. We need something from you. We need to hear in the comments if this is something that you enjoyed, and if this is something that you would like us to continue. Fortunately, we are critical thinkers, so no matter what you say, we'll continue. No, I'm just kidding. But I mean, but it is interesting for us to hear what you think. If this is helpful, useful, of course, this was just an introduction, but input, constructive input is
critical
valued.
input. And any topics,
Yes.
if there's any specific topics that you're interested in when it comes to argument in critical thinking.
Great suggestion. All right. Thank you very much for watching. We shall see you soon. Bye.